Hey, Alex Terry here. Thank you for tuning into my podcast. We are here to discuss all about leadership, thinking, and behaviors. We are here to talk about how to transit from control command leadership to more inspiring leadership with high influence and trust. We are going to deep dive into three components of leadership and performance: cognitive, emotional, and behavioral, and talk about how mastering our mind and thinking will actually change our action and results. Our thoughts are powerful, trust me. They determine how you feel, your decisions, and actions. Your thoughts are one of the most powerful tools you will ever have in changing your life and career. By mastering your thinking, emotions, and behaviors, you will create greater results for yourself, for your family, friends, or your team. Focusing on thinking, feeling, and acting will improve your confidence, of course, reduce stress, and empower you and others around you, inspire and improve engagement in your team or collaboration, and of course, create high performance. I hope you will enjoy our episodes. And please don't forget to comment or contact us. Please ask questions. Please send us ideas of what topics you are interested in, and we will discuss anything you need. Have a beautiful day. Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for tuning into my podcast. Today, I have a very special guest here, and someone that works in very, very similar field as myself. That means I'm very, very excited that we can have this amazing leadership and culture conversation. And let's see whatever we will, cover today. I would love to welcome John Barclay from Barclayss. I hope I pronounced that correctly, but I will probably give you a little bit of space to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about you and your background.
Perfect. Yeah. Hello, everyone. And thanks for having me on. It's great to take the opportunity to share like-minded thinking. So looking forward to having a conversation today. So yeah, John Barclay, I'm a leadership coach for about the last 20 years and started my company Barclayss back in 2018. And, we work with lots of different organizations around helping leaders understand their role and what they do. And, I've been privileged enough to have traveled the world and helped many leaders in many different countries in different contexts. So feel like I've got a reasonably good amount to share, but always learning. And that's why I like talking to people like yourself. It gives us a good chance to learn.
Yeah, thank you so much, John. And that's exactly why we probably connected and we talked together, because we are all lifelong learners, and I will be learning from you as well today, I'm sure. And I love that when I was looking at your website and what you stand for, and when we had conversation last time, we are very aligned with values and how we actually see the leadership itself. And both of us basically understand that it all starts with leadership and who we truly are, and how we actually make people feel. And I think that's when the conversation started, that actually what is more important, right? Like it's going back to simple things and back to basics, that we are all human beings and we all want to be heard, seen, understood, and we want to feel good around people. That was my major kind of point. I said, no, you need to come, we need to have this conversation because it is so important. Yeah, I really appreciate that you're here. It's really nice to have you. And I will probably just start from perspective of leadership, because the word is overused right now, right? Like it's all about leadership, leaders. First part after COVID was blaming leaders, how bad they are. And I think it was a lot, just talking and blaming. And I feel today is time to go back to simple, to basics, and I really think, okay, what leadership is and why we talk about that so much. What do you think?
Yeah, you're right. It's a very common topic. It's a word that's thrown around a lot now. And, for me, leadership is about behaviors that we have, right? It's, it doesn't come with a title or anything. The assumption is because I've got a position and I've got a title where I look after teams or I look after people, it automatically makes me a leader. Well, no, you've got roles and accountabilities and managerial responsibilities. Leadership's actually about relationships and about people and how you build those. And I think it's becoming more topical because we are becoming more aware about how important it is to create a workplace where people have a positive experience and people can actually thrive and be themselves and contribute in their own unique way. And people are amazing. They've got amazing strengths. They've got amazing contributions and different perspectives. And I think sometimes without really good understanding of our role as a leader, we can stifle that a little bit too much.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And that will be probably just going back to what you said, because it's amazing. Exactly. And I believe it's because we started to realize that how important it is to have better relationships, better experience from work environment. But when you think about before COVID probably and after, because I know there's a lot of changes, like I can see it every day what is happening, and I know the market is crazy. You can see what is happening in recruitment space as well. But what do you think? What do you think it was like a major change from perspective of leadership and what is required? That's a big question.
That's a big question. I think the first point around people being in lockdown and having to work from home and try and keep some form of normality going while not able to come to a workplace, I think tested people around, well, what does it really mean to have relationships with people, right? And for me, some of the things I noticed was leaders saying, but we're still having our meetings, they're just online. And I'm like, okay, but normally if you're in a workplace, you would have more casual conversations. You just walk past someone's office and say hello and good morning and have a conversation. How are you checking in with people? And I think what I've noticed after COVID is leaders have become probably more conscious about those subtleties we do with team members and our people, and being more deliberate about it and understanding the value of having those connections with people beyond just having a meeting to talk about what we need to achieve. It's actually, there's some social engagement that is very important for us. And after COVID, some have maintained that working balance of working from home and going back to the office. But I think leaders, people in leadership roles, have started to understand it's important to be very deliberate about what we're doing to stay connected.
Yeah, I love that word. Yeah, it's definitely being deliberate about like what we do, how we relate to each other, how we relate to people. And yeah, that's talking straight away, processes and systems in place, how to connect, how to stay connected. I guess that will be probably simplifying that. And what do you think? Because I noticed that when we go back to industrial age, right? Like we had this command control leadership. It was very normal. And it was good for that age. I believe that was exactly what was required, right? Like we were having that type of education. We had that type of leaders. We just used to it. We used to work that way, right? Like having our 45 minutes or 1 hour or 5 hours of work. After that, having break, looking forward to have a break. And became, slowly robots. But I believe what changed that people, because we were so busy, everyone was probably, before COVID. I just feel like maybe that's supposed to happen from perspective of what we were doing. We were just doing, and we were working so hard. Everybody was chasing something. And after that, it was like this pause for 2 years or more, right? And it was that reflection time, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Realizing that, I don't know if that was the same for you, but that realization that there is more in this life, like there is more for us, there is more to take care of. There are more important things than just profits and KPIs. I'm still saying that, yes, that's important. I'm not saying it's not, because I have business to run. But I guess,
Yeah, I think the important thing that you said in there was, we've been conditioned for a long period of time of this command and control, routine, structure, and that come from the industrial revolution of manufacturing and processing, where we needed these sequence of events to be very productive and be very sequence orientated. It required less innovation at the frontline workforce. It was just follow the process. So the command and control worked pretty well for that. And that's the way our education system was set up to prepare us for that and get that mindset going. But as we get into this information revolution, it's more open. Like, we need to be more curious about what the possibilities are. And you're right, we still need to measure things. We still need to monitor what success is, and do we know we're getting there? It's just not as rigid and probably automated as it used to be. We probably need to be quite constructive in what we're measuring and why we're measuring it, and what does it mean to people.
I think that's really true what you just say, and I think that's the most important part when we go to qualitative measures, right? Because that's what is still very hard to grasp. For some people, they still don't understand, and it's okay, because we haven't been learning that for ever. For some people, they never have any psychology subject in the school. That means it's really hard, right, just to think about that, how we can measure empathy, how we can measure collaboration, how we can measure actually emotions and thinking. And it is new concept. It's still new concept for a lot of people. And I love what you said. I just really understand what and why we're going to measure. That means having these qualitative measures connected to some quantitative measures or objectives or outcomes, and understanding why we measure those outcomes, and also goals and KPIs. Everything changed from perspective. Yes, it is about financial KPIs, but how we can connect it to outcomes that will inspire people. It's like all this new art of leadership there. And because of that, I will probably ask you, because I know you have a lot of experience, and I would like to kind of see what experience we have, what we think, both of us, and what is the experience from our clients or people we talking every day. What do you feel like is the major thing that is coming up as a challenge for leaders?
There's probably a few. I think probably the most common one we're talking about is just how diverse we're becoming, right? So we're a very diverse society, and what that creates for a challenge for leaders is everyone's individual needs and motivators are different. So learning to understand how to listen and how to really understand individuals' motivations and change your leadership style based on what people need from you is probably the biggest challenge I hear. People, we have our own personality as a leader, and we have our own sort of default just communication styles and those sorts of things. And when you need to adjust that for someone, it can be very difficult. And I think leaders struggle with that. I think the other one too is, over the years, we've become, a lot of our standards and what's required in the workplace is heavily regulated, right? I mean, I specialize quite heavily in the safety field with organizations. So I really help them understand their risk and how to engage people around safety. And because it's heavily regulated, it can become very compliant orientated. It can drive leaders to just do things because they have to do them. They haven't really understood why they're doing them. And then they wonder why we don't get good engagement and really good consultation happening, because we're really just following the process rather than actually using the process as an engagement and consultation process. So I think the compliance regulation stifles leaders sometimes. And I also think the fact that we're extremely a diverse society makes it very challenging for people to understand the differences that come with that.
Yeah. I love what you say about communication, because I was just finalizing last week the communication course separately, because I found that communication, not only knowing tonality, voice, body language, that's the basic, right? But understanding people's styles. And I know you do DISC as well, probably with your clients. And I love DISC, right? Like when we talk about extended DISC, from perspective of how amazing you can use this tool in work environment and learn as a leader to understand people, but understand yourself as well, because we know what are our strengths and how we communicate, most of the time. And I had this conversation all the time, especially when I work with CEOs and CEOs, for example, they work really closely together. And usually you have those, that the energies. We usually see most of CEOs are the energy, dominant energy. And now they try to communicate with COO or any other leaders, senior leaders. And there's these massive gaps when people coming like, oh my God, like this person is so bold and rude and demanding and basically all these like negative feelings, and people feel they're attacked or they become defensive, to respond to that type of leader. And it's not a bad leader. It's just that communication style. First of all, they're not aware of that.
Yep.
And they don't know how to adjust it because they don't understand what behavioral style people around them are, right? And it's such a simple tool, such a simple thing to do. And it actually creates magic. It creates totally different work environment. And it's really simple way to do it. And that's why when you say that, I was like, yes, I saw on your website the 4 elements. And I said, yeah, I'm sure you did this. It's beautiful. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, it is. It's powerful because self-awareness and social awareness are just key.
Yeah.
Right? So as we said, leadership's about relationships. So
yeah,
you've got to understand yourself and how people see that and what others' communication styles are. And you're right, when you get a very dominant style like a D that's very results orientated, very fast thinking, doesn't necessarily put as much awareness to or concentration to the detail.
Yeah.
Someone that's a high C who loves detail, loves process, and feels like they're not being valued because we're not considering all the level of detail that it takes to execute something.
Yeah.
And when people understand those differences, then they understand why sometimes we have to be more deliberate with our communication in circumstances. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love what you said. It's so important. And just made me think about something when you said it, simple thing like acknowledge someone's work. We don't need to do it probably for the energies or I energies. We are all happy, right? But when you have that C style, that very analytical mind, the most important part for them to get an acknowledgement for work, but then why you don't give them when actually the work they do, it's very valuable, especially for me style when I'm not putting too much attention to details. That's why I have to have all C energies around me. It's amazing. I think that's why I love leadership work in general, because it's all about human beings. It's about the relations, how we relate to each other. And I don't know if you get a lot of questions like from the perspective when we talk about challenges and problems. I always get a question about how can I motivate people? And I just want them to do what they should do. I don't want to tell them every day, right? Because leaders naturally wants to move away from command control. They don't want to micromanage. They really want to just see people to do stuff, right? And don't tell them every day because it's really tiring. Do you have a lot of leaders coming with the same problem?
Look, you're right. I think that's probably another fairly common conversation we get into is how do I motivate my team? Or what I probably hear coming back a lot is how many times do I have to keep telling them? How many times do I have to keep telling them? And I'm like, well, maybe that's a part of the problem is it's all about telling them, rather than actually having a conversation about it. So fundamentally, what the struggle for a leader is, I guess what the challenge for a leader to embrace is there's an outcome you want to get to. There's an objective you want to achieve. How do you have a meaningful conversation with individuals to get them connected as well to that objective? And depending on the personality type you're dealing with, it could be all about the success of achieving something and the pride that comes with achieving something. And that could be enough to connect it. It could be the excitement of learning something new to get to that goal. Imagine the growth you're going to have stepping into this new activity and explore it and learn and research. It could be about the teamwork that has to come to getting it done. So it's understanding the individual you're dealing with and how do you connect them to the journey of achieving the objective. And I think we underestimate that a lot.
That's taking me to that environment we are creating as a leader, right? Like, because what you say is already the action and behavior we have. And I know you're focusing a lot on behaviors, but also what do you think is before? Because I have like a theory behind like what is actually before behavior, like what we actually need to do, or what we need to maybe fix or change or focus on, to get actually behaviors that will give us the best results.
Yeah. And as you and I spoke about last time, there's a few different models around, but fundamentally behaviors come because we had a decision made, so what are we thinking? What's the thought process going behind the decision making that's coming with that? That gets framed from a few different things. It can be environmentally affected by what's going on around us and the instructions, what's happening around, but it can come from the beliefs we have as well. So thinking into our own individual beliefs, those beliefs have generally come from some core values that have sat there for a long time. And unless we really start to understand those different drivers, the thoughts people have, the thinking patterns they get into, the beliefs they have around things, or we can talk about that as the bias that people have around certain things, and what do they value the most, then you're really not going to get that connection, that motivational intrinsic drive to actually doing something versus an extrinsic carrot stick model that we've got to actually put a carrot out there for them to be motivated. That can work short term, and that's why I think a lot of previous managerial styles hang on to that. It's quick, it's easy. Put a carrot out there, we achieve it, we give them the carrot. If they don't achieve it, then we give them
2 carrots.
To do. It's very easy to do, and but it's not damaging culturally.
I agree. It's not sustainable in general, because that's basically when you have those problems, when people coming back to you and they are negotiating salaries, they want more. And, when you have thousands of employees, and if that happens, that you have a lot of things to do, right? And it becomes messy. And I think that's another topic, that there's a lot of missing structures for collective achievement, because we still have the structures and processes in place for individual reward, and that is still promoting individualism instead of that collective thinking, collective vision and values-based behavior, and really try to move the whole team, as a team, not just as an individual. And I think that's another big task of every leader, that like they need to change that. And I think that's the biggest thing, that's starting with the point of what you just said, with thinking, with values, with beliefs.
I think the other bit for those who are listening is just admit, sometimes leaders just got to admit, I actually got that wrong, right? So I'll share a story here about me and my business is, I was a busy leader. I'm doing a lot of work. I'm working in the business and on the business. So I went down the traditional path of setting up a reward and recognition process around the work that we do, right? And it was about a year on, I started to notice the cultural norms that were coming with that. The focus was on how do we get to the reward? How do we get to the financial, not actually what we're doing and why we're doing it. So
getting something back.
So it was all about striving for that extra payment, or that extra, bonus, or whatever that structure is. So I had to own that, and I had to be really deliberate in unwinding it. And it was a difficult time to unwind that structure. But, a couple of years on now, it's the best thing I did, because now we're finding the intrinsic drive to what we do and why we do things.
I think it's so important. I love what you're sharing, because we all made mistakes. I had a few different businesses and a few different structures as well. How I was actually, driving my business or leading my business. If that was leadership that time, probably not. But it's the same thing, that I try to be different, and I realized that when I got people on board, we started to have this free culture. And there's also the level of freedom you can give your team based on maturity. And I didn't realize that, because that time I didn't know the model that is actually something like maturity of the team and people. And of course, I realized that I can't just tell people make decisions about your salary, right? Make decisions about your holidays. Like it's mess. Me being in stress and chasing because people just stop doing what they're supposed to do. That means it was basically opposite of what I wanted to achieve. Yeah. And it's interesting how it goes when you start to understand that people need to have still some kind of boundaries, healthy boundaries. But it's about them understanding each other, understanding what they're doing and what is the puzzle, what their work actually is in that, big whole teamwork. What does that mean? What they need to deliver and why is that important for other people in the team as well? And all relations, actually, that solve the problem, not even like a big changes, but understanding people, their responsibilities and how they're influencing others in that work environment. And I think that's going back to communication and relationships and social awareness. It's so important. And so many mistakes I did as well. We can talk about it hours and hours, right?
Well, we can, and I think that's my main bit of advice to leaders is just to admit you don't always get it right and be humble, and that's when you'll start learning. That's when you'll put the ego aside and have to justify why you did what you did and try and hold your ground and be, no, I put that in place and that was my structure and that's what I'm sticking to it. It's everything has unintended consequences. Sometimes we don't understand, like we do things with really good intent. And then in reflection, we go, oh, I didn't really expect that to be an outcome of that. And be honest and be open and say, hey, that I wasn't expecting that. That's really not what I'm wanting. That's not really what we want to create. So let's change it. At the end of the day, you're the leader. You can change it, and I think most of us get scared to change something, getting some results, because we're scared that if we change it, will we get worse results, right? And we tend to worry about us losing the results we're getting rather than the results that we may get that are better than we were getting before. So it's being courageous enough to try some things, test and try, learn, understand, adjust, and keep moving.
Understanding that some people are really stressed when there is uncertainty or if there is change, and understanding how can you actually, with your leadership, with your conversation, with your style, how you can actually support people to actually give them support to feel safe, even in the times of uncertainty. I think that's another big task of leadership, and that's coming with understanding the drivers, motivators, people's different styles. And I feel like we are going back to that, and it seems to be going through all conversation that understanding people is just a big outcome we have from this conversation. Just understand your people. And I love it. We talk about beliefs and values, and we kind of like just went a little bit to a different way. But I was curious from perspective of values, because I noticed that a lot of companies have values. They have written them on website. They are on the board somewhere. Almost every company now have values, because that was something that someone says, if you want good culture, you need to have values. But I feel like it always ends up there.
Yep.
And there's not a lot of people that understand how to bring values in the day-to-day operations, like to day-to-day demonstration of values-based behavior. And I feel like, is that struggle that you see? Because I see it everywhere. Like people have values, but they don't even remember them.
And if they do remember them, it's purely because they've been plastered up on a wall, and it's a transactional remember they are, but not necessarily what they mean and how do they show up. You're right. It seemed like we went through this stage where if you don't have values, then you're not a value.
Can't employ people.
And the most common thing I think people struggle with is if they're organizational values, they're not personal values, right? And we're individual people. We have our own, as we said before, we have our own beliefs and values, right? And if we don't take the time and deliberate energy to make connections between what the organizational intention is with those values to you as a person and your personal values, then they're always just going to be seen to be disconnected and not actually behave in line with what the organization is driving. Unless we're constantly talking about them and making connections to what are we doing and how are we doing it and how does that live and demonstrate our values, if we're not actively exploring that all the time, then they're not a part of the way we do our work. They're just a poster on the wall. And when I started my company, all the team were like, oh, we should put our posters up on the wall. And I very deliberately said, I'm not putting any posters up around our values. If we can't talk about them and learn what they are by talking about them, well, then they're not the right ones. Then we're missing something. So, I think the easy thing to do sometimes is to be very symbolic and put things up.
Yeah.
And rely on that to be the driver of it, when actually it requires you as the leader to facilitate the connection, what they are.
I believe there is also the reason for having the visual. For me, it's actually, I like it. I put our values always on the wall, but it's not, as you said, it's not enough, right? Like, it's not that they are staying on the wall and that's it. Like, that's just not right. I think from perspective of big organizations, when you have, for example, teams in different countries, branches in different countries, what I found, there is big disconnection because it feels like organizations set up values for how our product looks like what we want to be known for, but it doesn't have anything with real behavior inside of organization and teams. They are working directly with customers, and it's very big disconnection. I don't know if you find out that is working well for you, but what I do sometimes, we do like a subcultures, and we create team values. Of course, they are aligned with organizational values, but we really try to find the words and wording and expression that can express better for the team that we are working with, the values they are on organizational level, because sometimes people can't connect with them, like directly with the words and everything what they use on that organizational level. Is that something you do as well?
Yeah, it's definitely something I've probably done more of over the last few years is get the context right for the team.
Yeah, exactly.
Really understand. So are you a operations or a delivery team? Like, are you producing something? Oh, okay then. So what are the values we need to raise to be good at that, right? To actually be really good. Are we a maintenance team, or are we, fixing things there for them? Well, what are we customer service orientated? What's the context of the team? And therefore then, what are the values you need to live by to be really, really good at that? Are you the finance team? Are you the HR team? Are you the safety team? Whatever team you are, you're right. We spend more time now going, okay, well, the organization has this overarching values, your intention for us to be aligned to, but there's never a massive distinction between what the team's talking about. You just have to do a quick check. Okay, so does that actually line up with whatever the organization's asking for? Well, yeah, it does.
And it usually does. It is connection, that's for sure. And I love that you are looking at that differentiation of the team and what we doing, what is actually our role as a team. Because yes, we collaborate all together, but getting the results in general from perspective of we have 10 different departments, or 10 different teams, we need to have value, transparent communication, because it is starting to be enormous. There's a lot of different teams that need to talk to each other because they actually can solve problems better. We are so disconnected, but easy to connect, but we don't do it because there is that missing gap of actually how we communicate the best as a people.
Yeah. Well, the assumption is that all this technology is connecting us.
Yeah, exactly. But it's not.
But it's actually not, because, there's a difference between interacting, which we can interact through different technologies.
Yes, a real connection.
Versus actually being with someone and connecting. There's a big difference. We can interact better and further than we've ever been able to. But just because I'm interacting with someone in the US doesn't mean I'm actually connecting with them. But it doesn't necessarily mean I've made a connection, because connection for humans is very social. I mean, how many times do you see teams communicating by email when they're actually sitting less than 10 meters from each other? And I can remember when it became more about using email from an organizational point of view. It was very clear around, well, how many times did I actually get it? How many times did I have to go and recover messages personally face to face because they misinterpreted the email? I always talk about that from an email perspective in business. The amount of times we try and send a message in email and it causes conflict. But I think it goes back to the original question you asked me about the challenges for leaders in a diverse workplace. Is it's also now the verbal language. It's for my wife, English is her second language as well, and we get caught out still sometimes about the words being used with. We know in English one word can have many different meanings and it can be used in many different contexts. And we can have a conversation and use what seems like a really obvious, word terminology to be using, but in the context it was a bit, that takes me back. And I think we keep encountering more on that, and that's why I keep saying just be curious around how you're impacting people. Just understand, as long as you're doing everything with really good intent, just understand that that's always recoverable then. When you start doing things with malicious intent, they're not going to be done. They're not going to be recoverable. Leaders just need to be really good at understanding how words have different meanings and can be heard or read differently. And be prepared to recover it. Just be prepared to go back and say, that wasn't my intent. Apologize. This is actually what I meant. And be comfortable that that's okay to do that. It's strength.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely strength and admit that we are not always right and we all make mistakes. We are all human beings. And I love the communication art, and being more mindful in the communication with anyone, with your kids, with parents, with husbands, wives. It's just so important. I'll probably ask you if you have anything else or what you would like to add at the end, and also where we can find you or how people can connect with you.
Yeah, great. What would I like to add at the end? Oh, there's so much you could just go
I
into.
know.
I think I'll end where I started, and it'll be just stay open to learning. I think if we can just be open to learning and growing, it doesn't necessarily mean you can't hold on to what's important. It doesn't mean you've got to change everything that's happening, but just be curious and learn and grow and consider it before actually moving forward. And I think when we get good at that, to be open, be curious, be considerate, and then move forward, we know we can do that with conviction and we can do that with strength and probably demonstrate what people are more associated with a leader that comes with confidence and comes with that presence that people sort of had that preconceived idea about leadership. But if people want to reach out, look, I'm on LinkedIn. People can find me on LinkedIn. Just search John Barclay and you'll see me. But you can also find us at Barclayss with the SS.com. And love talking to people about leadership. I'm happy to talk to anyone about the challenges that they're facing and try and help.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And I'm looking forward to another one. I hope we will have another conversation because I think it's very important to keep things simple, right? And learn and be open. And I love that because it's raising the awareness, and increasing our awareness about ourselves and others. And I believe that will all just help us to have better companies, better businesses.
Yeah, and look, and I thank you for reaching out and connecting, and I thank you for giving me the opportunity to come and talk to you on here because we do have the same values of helping leaders. So it's a good connection to have.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you very much, John, and wish you a beautiful day.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
Thanks.